Today's demo is painting a white daisy. I'm going to work small, and you can always go to images, Google, copyright free, and pull up some white daisies to look at. It's good to have a reference. Actually, I went out into my garden and I have these beautiful white Shasta daisies. So looking at them, and I'm not trying to paint. This is a very loose, quick flower that I'll be painting today using this style. So I start out with the center, and I'm just making my circle, and then I'm looking at these petals, and the petals are long ovals, and some of them overlap and they turn down and they're not perfect. So we're not looking for perfection here. And some of them curve down. I'm just coming around. I spin the paper around to make it easier for myself when I'm drawing. And some fall like underneath, so it's good to have a few of the petals. They touch, they overlap. There's a lot of petals on that daisy. All right, that's good enough. Now I'm going to look at that and spin that around, and I think I'll have the stem. Stem is just going to go right off the page. So starting with my color, I am going to be giving some of these, using a Joe's Blue. I'm using Cheap Joe's watercolors on this demo. And coming in, actually, I got a little green. So I'm diluting that. And I'm always thinking of controlling my water. I want to give these white petals just a little bit of color. Some of them push down behind. And I'm going to get my rigger brush, and I'm going to put a few little, rigger brush is a liner brush. A few veins. And you don't want to go too dark on those, so keep it light. You can do ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, whatever blue you have. Okay, so that's step. The next step I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and do the center. I'm taking a little bit of Aurelian and a little raw sienna, and coming in and getting that center. I want the very center to be a little bit lighter, and I will come back in and get a shadow in there, so I'm putting around my darker I might just leave that highlight there. Okay, so negative painting, because our watercolor paper is white, we do not have to buy white as a color. So this is one technique to paint around your white shapes. You can use candle, you can use masking fluid. There's different ways to save your whites, but this is one way that's very simple. If you have a simple shape to paint around, it's quicker, and it's called negative painting. So I'm wetting around the shape that I'm saving my white flower. And I'm coming in, and you can't even see really where I wet it. Sometimes it's a sheen that you can see if you can pick it up and see that sheen. It's hard. Sometimes you can miss some areas. But I'm coming in and I'm charging that with this Joe's Blue. It is strong, and I'm gonna pick it up and just let that run. It's nice to have a variation where I'm going from dark. Now I'm coming in a little bit lighter. I'm also going to pick up a little bit of brown, just for variation. The darker you come around the flower, the more that flower will have contrast. And you can pull it out. I have a hair in there, so I'm just, don't go in with your fingers as much as you want. You just use your brush because it's soft, and pull that out. Okay, so now we were doing wet on wet. This is dry brushing, wet on dry, where I'm coming in now and not wetting the paper first, and you have a bit more control. And I just wanted to show both techniques. You can try one flower with one technique of wetting all around the flower first and dropping the color in, or you can do wet on dry. So, or a combination like what I did was kind of half and half. So whatever you'd like, but it's a good to experiment with both types of ways of applying watercolor. There's no right or wrong. Each artist, some artists do a combination, some only paint wet on wet, wet on dry. You know, I usually do a combination depending on what my subject matter I think would work best. So I'm pulling that out to the edges. And because that brown has a little bit of yellow in it, notice how it turns it a little green tint, which is kind of fun because when I put the stem in, the stem's going to be green. And it's nice to have your colors all harmonize. And if you don't have that color only on the stem or a green hue, it looks better when it ties in. Okay, so now I'm going to come in and I'm just going to tickle some of these edges. This is softening those edges. I'm doing it while it's still wet, so I'm really coming in with my brush and taking all the water out of my brush and just softening these edges. If you don't do this, it can be just too hard of an edge and it looks like you cut that daisy out and like pasted it on the paper. It doesn't like tie in and ground with the background. And I'm just going to not do it on every petal because I want some hardness here and there. It grabs your attention. I'm going to pull this up a little closer to the stem and come in with my stem while it's still wet. I'm going to add a little bit of burnt sienna with the green, that's Hooker's green, and come in here and pull that stem out. That's gonna bleed a little bit, but that's okay. I just want it to be very loose, very loose. Okay, going to add a little bit of the burnt sienna. It's still wet, but I'm tapping that and controlling that. I want more of a definition. For a little more dimension on that. I'm going to add some salt. So I take you can take table salt, sea salt, kosher salt, Himalayan salt, any type of salt. It's like kind of salting a salad. You don't want to dump it on, you just want to get it on there. Also, while this is still wet, I think of my signature. It would be too small to stick it right there, so this has space. Your signature actually becomes part of the artwork. Okay, I'm going to come back in and actually even give my daisy, it's a white daisy, but it's reflecting the blue around it. So I'm going to come in and just still give it, whoops, I hit that. Still give it a little bit of more color, and that's bleeding in there. It wasn't dry completely, but I can come in and touch that. All right. And I'm going to come in and touch that a little bit and pull in a tiny bit of green, yellow. Into the sides of that daisy. Okay, I don't want to overwork it. I'm just going to soften this edge here and there a little bit. A little jumping out at me too much. And coming back in with even a little bit darker burnt umber, getting that, like that little ledge around there. And that's just bleeding in there. And once that's dry, you still see the pencil marks. You can go back in and erase those with a white plastic eraser and lift all of those once it's completely dry. So I'm not going to overwork this. I'm going to pick up, that ran a little bit there, but that doesn't bother me. And that's negative painting a little white daisy. I'll bring that in closer so you can see that. So practice, do a few of them, try wet into wet, wet on dry, and have fun and enjoy. Thank you for joining me today.